Hi, I'm Kimberly Lane.
I'm Sonia Jante.
And I'm Jonathan Ward, and together we're unlocking leadership. We're three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. In every episode, we take a question from a real client and provide key insights to address their challenge from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunities. So let's get to it. Our question today is from George in Fairfax, Virginia. George asks, a leader in my department was recently written up for a hostile workplace incident. HR told him that he either has to be coached or leave the company. Can coaching truly help him if he's being compelled to go through this process? Kimberly, what should George know about how coaching can work in this situation?
Thank you, George, for your question. And it's a valid point. Can somebody really be helped grow and expand and work on themselves and be better through coaching? And the answer is yes, with a caveat. So this individual, he really has to want to improve and to get better. He has to be open to becoming more self-aware of what triggers him to be hostile in the workplace, if you will. And is he going to be open to being coached? Is he going to be open to being vulnerable and truly express what might have contributed to that, and what feelings was coming up before he had this hostile event? So those three things really are important in order for coaching to be effective. If he is, it certainly would be very, very effective for him, and I think he could make a lot of headway. If he can't, and he's kind of blocked and won't really open up and share, it would be very, very difficult to accomplish that. I do a lot of work with clients on their EQI, and just impulse control is one of the 15 emotional skills that come up in having EQI intelligence, if you will. So in this particular case, learning a new impulse control and working through with a coach on that and how to identify his triggers, that becomes self-aware, and then be able to use different tools in order to stop that trigger or action that would succinctly come right after that. So I think he's got a great opportunity. Again, he's got to be willing, open, and want to improve and get better. So I think he's got a shot. So I'll be anxious to hear if he does go through coaching and how that works out for him, George.
George, when I read this question, I thought, how did he know? One of the very first coaching assignments that I had was exactly this situation. And I remember even having the HR business partner, basically saying to me, it's okay if you can't get him to the right place. We're prepared to separate from him. And I was like, wow. So I remember walking in, and what I saw when I walked into to this man was he was like all crunched up, and he was like this in his office. And I walked in and I sat down and I said, okay, they may call you an axe murderer, but you're not an axe murderer until I say you're an axe murderer. I wanted just to sort of break the ice kind of thing. And he started laughing a little bit and giggling. And I just looked at him and I said, look, I'm here to understand what you actually experienced, what actually went on. And then I'm going to play back to you what I heard. And then I'm going to walk you through the lens that other people saw this through. Because until you can get to a place where you recognize that there are several different versions of something happening, you're not going to be able to make any progress. And if we can start there, then there's a possibility that this will actually be successful. But you've got to be able to trust me for us to be able to have that dialogue. And what happened was, it was for the first time he felt heard, because whenever anybody is accused of creating a hostile work environment, an investigation goes on and they're immediately sidelined. And in many ways, they feel like, I didn't get to say what it was that I was thinking or experiencing or whatever. And all that I know is that I've been labeled with this and I don't really have a way out, kind of thing. And I wanted him to have that opportunity to sort of get to a new place about being able to both recognize things in himself and recognize things in the incident. The good news is we had a very successful coaching engagement. He remained with the company for another 10 years. He retired from there. And so it was all about his attitude, but it also, I think, matters as to what kind of a coach you're going to get. Because this is not something that you need somebody that's a brand new coach to get in. You need somebody with a lot of either leadership experience who's had to handle these kinds of situations so that they can actually, one of the things that he said to me, I really appreciate is I never looked at it from the other side. I never looked at it from how other people could have perceived it. And he said, now that you've given me that perception, I can now look at things a little different. The other thing is that what we found out was that in his particular case, it wasn't everybody that was saying he was creating a hostile work environment. It was one or two people that were having that experience. And then when we were able to look at, well, what blind spots did this affect him? And did they have any blind spots to him? And we found that there was, again, experiences on both sides. So towards, a halfway through the coaching engagement, when we've done the 360, we were able to have like a conversation between him, facilitate a conversation between him and the two people that, if you will, had come forth, because they were willing, they felt safe enough to come in and have that kind of a conversation. So I think it can work, but so much depends on, who's the coach, how receptive the person is going to be to examining and experiences that they've had in a different way. Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, first of all, Sonia, I think he was very fortunate to have you as his coach. It sounds like you started that off on exactly the right foot with him. That was really masterful. And I have, I've had similar types of situations where I've gone into companies where coaching is kind of like, we're checking the box off before we let this guy go. It's punitive rather than remedial. And I guess I go back to also to the old jokes, like how many coaches does it take or how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb, right? It's just one, but the light bulb has to want to change. I've been in a situation before where I was brought in to coach a very senior leader in an organization. He had been turned down for what he thought was a sure promotion to CEO because of a hostile workplace environment. And his first question to me after the CEO left the room was, what do I need to do to make this go away? And I thought that's not a great way to start off a coaching engagement here. So what frequently happens to me sometimes when I get into organizations like this is I will have a heart-to-heart with the person's boss and with HR before I even talk to the client and say, are you really serious about wanting to keep this guy around? If he does what you ask him to do, if he goes through coaching and does make changes, are you willing to keep that person on board? Because not all companies are willing to do that. And so if that's the case, I want to know it up front before we go into it, because I don't want to set any kind of false expectations with the client before we go into it. I really believe coaching can be a real gift to somebody. It doesn't need to be a punitive thing that, we're doing this to document our files. And it may be that it's too late for the leader at this organization. It may be impossible to put that incident behind you, but that individual, if it can be a real watershed moment for that person to come to the realization that there are things that I do that are not very effective. And you think about the old adage about people who get divorced, is if you don't go to therapy or don't do something, you're going to take exactly who you were in your past relationship to your next relationship. And so, this is an opportunity for you to think about who you are and what you're bringing to the table and what you might want to do differently if you go on to another organization. So there is an opportunity for you to grow and improve, even if it might not be at that same company.
Yeah,
so it's a really go ahead, Kimberly.
So you brought up some things that I think are worth discussing as coaches, and what cases do we take on and what do we choose not to take on. I think your mention of meeting with the HR team and leadership decide, our intention is to really work on this person. We value this person as an individual, and give them an opportunity to improve, and their intention is to keep them. I think that's really important on the context of what Sonia said when she first meets with the individual. I would begin with, hey, obviously this incident occurred, I found out a lot of the details, but I want to reassure you here that you're a big part of this company. They're investing in you by bringing me in here in order to just help you mature in, that emotional skill, or help understand or improve upon whatever it is, right? And they're investing you to do this, and they fully are, have trust in you, or hope in you that you can get through this, right? So by setting up the stage that we're here to help, as opposed to we're here to punitive damages, right? So, but I think that having that conversation is really, really necessary for you to understand as a coach, what happens. I don't really like to be put in that position where you're just checking the box, right? I don't know. And I think that's a bad name for coaches too. Then we start the coach is coming in, we know what the next step is after that, right? So I think as an organization and for ICF and in coaching, I think it's something we need to talk about, what our role is and how we want to be perceived. I like to be more of an asset to an organization, individual, period. If we do choose to take that, I know I can still help the individual. And I think that's the other explanation with the individual is, maybe that's just a company, that's just the way they work. But the work we do with that client will still be impactful. They will still grow, provided they're open, they're vulnerable, they're receptive to change, introspection, self-awareness. That can still be impactful as they carry that learning to their next leadership role, right? And I think, yeah, it gets messy, and I don't like to be put in those positions. But I do know we can still help them, and whether they stay there or not, they can certainly grow and learn and be better.
One
Personally,
of the things that I think about that's so good today versus way back when I first started was in those days, primarily coaching was a fix-it coaching thing versus work with high potentials and truly developmental. What was interesting for this particular company that I mentioned is they really had never had a coach come in. They pretty much had fired people because they were in the food business. So they did a lot of stuff with unions. And so they had like their own, this person was not part of that structure. So what was interesting is as a result of that coaching engagement going well, the HR business partner recommended coaching for some other people, and immediately people backed down, was like, I'm not in so and so situation. And she said, no, 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 actually, we're actually thinking of investing. So it served as a pivot point for them to actually position coaching in a different way. And I worked with them for the next 10 years in a variety of different situations. And they kept acquiring other companies in the industry. And they were able to position the fact that they had that as a way for the development of people's careers. So it becomes a strategic advantage over time. But it's, again, if you're going to do it in this particular case, George, for the person there, it may be a one-off kind of thing, but normally coaching is a developmental thing. And so, but I go back to the insights that are gained, whether the person stays or not, are valuable to everybody because both the organization will learn things and the person will learn things.
most definitely. Yep.
All right. Anything else anybody else wants to add? All right. Well,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you, George from Fairfax, Virginia, for your question today. We hope you, our viewers and listeners, learn more about how coaching can help a leadership. To our listeners, if you like the content we shared today, please like the episode and share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unlocking Leadership. That's askthecoaches.com. We look forward to reading your reviews. If you have any kind of questions, you can also find Unlocking Leadership Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. If you have a question, leadership question, and would like to reach out to our coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us today. Tune in next time to find the keys to unlocking your best leadership.